The shuttle docked with a mechanical hiss against Axion 9, home to the Galactic Senate and the illusion of order. Juno Maddox stood at the threshold, wrists magnetically bound, flanked by two Vortec enforcers with faces like polished obsidian. Her boots echoed with every step, and she couldn't decide whether it was the hallway acoustics or the tension making the air hum. She chewed her gum a little harder. A receptionist drone scanned her. Subject Juno Maddox. Accused of overstepping civilian combat protocols. Senate Trial 541 Delta convened. Overstepping, she muttered, because I didn't die politely. The double doors parted, revealing the chamber, massive, cold, brilliant. Rows of alien delegates watched from elevated seats, skin tones ranging from bioluminescent blue to molten gold. Every eye focused on her like she was radioactive. Senator Threx Vieira, old and tall with veined green skin like dry bark, stood at the center. His gaze was a scalpel. Bring the Earth native forward. Juno was guided to a platform in the center, framed by the swirling starscape beyond the transparent dome. A beautiful view, if you could ignore the silent judgment floating above it. Threx's voice cut the air like a guillotine. Is it true, Ms. Maddox, that you personally eliminated 432 enemy combatants in your last mission? She glanced up, bored. Before breakfast? Yeah. Or do drones not count anymore? A murmur rippled through the chamber. Threx pressed a long finger against a datapad. Your actions were unauthorized. You were a civilian operative, embedded only for recon. Yet you decimated 3 separatist factions, destroyed an AI supercore, and hijacked a dreadnought. Not hijacked, Juno corrected. Repurposed. You're welcome. The senator's expression never changed. Your sarcasm won't help you here. Do you understand the consequences of violating Union Combat Protocol 77B? I understand this galaxy still uses ancient legislation to regulate war like it's a card game, she said flatly. And when the trained elite failed, I did what I had to do. Your actions, Threx said slowly, make Earth civilians look dangerously ungovernable. That got her attention. Juno leaned forward. You want the truth, Senator? The trained elite panicked when the AI started rewriting battlefield laws mid-fight. Your soldiers were programmed to respond to structure. I wasn't. I responded to chaos. And I won. More murmurs. Some delegates whispered in their native tongues. A few leaned in with interest. Others looked disgusted. Earth's civilians are anomalies, Threx snapped. Unguided, unstable, a liability to galactic security. She barked a laugh. You mean unpredictable? That's what really scares you. Threx slammed a clawed hand onto the podium. Enough. This isn't a trial for your philosophy. You will answer to your record. The chamber lights dimmed, and holograms filled the air. Scenes from her mission, explosions, corridor skirmishes, swift kills. Juno, calm, precise, leaping between hover units, laying traps, weaponizing the environment. One moment showed her fashioning a trip mine from broken bot parts and a packet of chewing gum. The camera caught her grin. The image froze. Threx turned to the chamber. This is not strategy. This is madness. Juno tilted her head. Funny. That madness stopped the Perseid AI invasion while your elite squads requested evacuation. Threx's eye twitched. He gestured, and a second hologram floated up, a black cube, sealed in Senate-grade encryption. Unsealed 2 days ago. Classified logs. Missions your Earth civilians undertook outside any formal alliance, Threx said. Juno Maddox is only the loudest example. As the file opened, names and stats flickered across the chamber: gamers, street racers, ex-delivery personnel, urban gardeners with drone kill streaks rivaling entire alien battalions. The numbers were undeniable. Your civilians aren't just killing, they're outperforming every trained unit in this union. And that, Threx said, voice tight, is a threat to order. Silence. Then Juno whispered, you finally figured it out. Excuse me? Threx asked. You've all built your wars on traditions, ranks, formations, predictable systems. Earth doesn't have that luxury anymore. We evolved in collapsing cities, fighting resource riots, dodging rogue AIs before we even had a seat here. You train soldiers. We train survivors. The silence was heavy. Juno continued, voice steady. I didn't come here to gloat. I came because someone needs to tell you the truth. Earth civilians aren't trying to outshine your forces. We are your future. And if you don't learn to adapt, you'll lose. Threx stood frozen, the chamber still. Then a small chime echoed from the senator's desk. A message blinked on his screen. He paled. Juno raised a brow. Bad news? He ignored her. Trial adjourned. Pending further evaluation. No final speech, she asked, cocking her head. I had a zinger ready. The guards stepped forward, but he waved them off. For the first time, Threx looked unsure. She turned to walk away, her restraints silently unlocking. Before the doors closed behind her, Juno called back, next time, bring a better question. The hallway to the holding quarters was quiet. Too quiet. Juno walked alone now, her cuffs gone, her steps her own. Every surveillance orb blinked as she passed, curious, watching. Her trial hadn't ended with a verdict. It ended with silence. That worried her more. She tapped her wrist implant, pulled up the newsfeed. No headlines. No leaks. The Senate was keeping everything sealed. Which meant they were scared. A voice crackled from a ceiling speaker. You have a visitor. She halted. I didn't request one. It wasn't a request, the voice replied. The door ahead slid open. Inside, the light was dim, just enough to reveal the curved walls of an observation room. And in the center, an old friend she hadn't seen in 6 years. General Calverin, she said, blinking. The towering alien stood slowly, his segmented armor scratched but polished. His voice was deep, gravel over steel. I thought I owed you a debt. She folded her arms. Last time we met, you threatened to end the Earth infestation. And you blew up the AI nest that nearly vaporized my homeworld. Perspective changes. Juno stared at him, unsure. You came here to defend me? He nodded. I came here because they plan to erase you. Not imprison. Not exile. Erase. Juno's jaw tightened. Of course they do. Calverin moved closer, tone low. The Senate didn't expect the civilian files to leak. They underestimated how many alien factions started adopting Earth tactics. You've become a symbol. Dangerous symbols don't last long here. She sat on the edge of the table. Let me guess. Assassination framed as a containment accident? Drone malfunction. Clean, deniable, he confirmed. She exhaled, slowly. So why warn me? Because I saw what you did on Daltis Prime, he said. You adapted in real time, turned broken tech into battlefield tools. My elite died. You didn't. That wasn't courage, she said. That was desperation. He stepped back. Which is why you win. Juno looked away, silent. Her mind pulled her backward, before the Senate, before war. 6 years ago. Earth, Metro Zone Gamma. Smog choked the skyline. Sirens wailed in the distance, never stopping, like the city itself was screaming. She was 23, working as a freelance courier for biomed supplies. Drones didn't fly in the slum stacks, too risky. That job belonged to humans willing to run. She remembered sprinting across a rusted overpass, plasma fire chewing up the concrete behind her. A rogue city AI had turned rogue, unleashing guard bots and automated turrets on civilians. The military was nowhere. They didn't dare enter. She ducked under collapsed scaffolding, barely breathing. Screams echoed nearby. Children. She found them huddled inside a gutted mag train. No weapons. No food. She had a broken drone engine, a roll of copper wire, and 2 charges left on her delivery shield. That night, she built traps from scrap, rerouted a security beacon, and fried 3 bots before escorting the kids out. The news never mentioned her. But someone uploaded the footage. It spread. They started calling her the Ghost of Gamma. Others followed her lead. Not soldiers. Survivors. Back in the observation room, Juno's fingers curled on the table's edge. They don't understand Earth, she said. They think survival's a skill you learn in training. We were born into it. Calverin nodded. They fear what they can't shape. They want compliance, she said. Not competence. He stepped forward. But they can't erase the pattern. Every week, another Earth civilian pulls off a mission their own units couldn't finish. And every time, more species notice. More start copying. She gave him a dry look. They should. We've been playing life on nightmare mode since we got electricity. He allowed a small grin. Then you know what comes next. She sighed. Yeah. They'll double down. Paint us as threats, anomalies, unfit for the Senate. The door behind Calverin opened with a hiss. A Senate aide, young and pale, stepped inside, eyes wide. You need to see this, she said, projecting a feed onto the wall. It showed a Senate meeting, live, encrypted but hacked. Threx stood before the chamber, his face composed, voice cold. We propose Emergency Resolution 9K, immediate withdrawal of Earth civilian clearances across all combat zones. Further, a cleansing protocol. The aide shut it off. They're moving fast, she said. Calverin turned to Juno. The Senate is forcing a decision. Either you submit quietly, or you fight loud enough to make them listen. She stood. I don't do quiet. The aide swallowed. We have friends inside. A few delegates. But we need proof. Juno's eyes narrowed. You want me to expose them? No, Calverin said. We want you to remind them. Of what? He stepped aside. What happens when Earth stops playing nice? The Senate reconvened the next morning, but something had shifted. The chamber was full, but quiet, not respectful quiet, tense quiet. Delegates whispered behind sealed visors and biometric masks. Threx Vierre stood taller than ever, but his movements had lost their polish. He scanned the room like a man walking into a trap he couldn't see. Juno entered unshackled, flanked by 2 Earthborn security bots, older models, patched with human improvisation. She wore a simple flight jacket. No armor. No medals. Just confidence. Threx's voice echoed. You were granted audience again only to clarify records. This is not a forum for rebellion. Juno stepped into the center without waiting for permission. It's not rebellion if you're the one being dragged into the future. A flicker of irritation passed over his face. He gestured, and the room dimmed. Data streamed through the air, heat maps, kill ratios, mission reports. Earth civilian combatants account for 78% of successful missions in unstable sectors, Threx said, voice clipped. Yet you maintain no formal training, no regulation, and no accountability. You think regulation wins wars? Juno asked, walking the edge of the platform. The only thing we were ever regulated by was survival. Threx raised a claw. Earth's chaos has infected command protocols. Other species now imitate you. That must be stopped before military doctrine collapses entirely. At that, General Calverin stood from his corner seat. He spoke calmly but clearly. Doctrine failed on Daltas Prime. Maddox didn't. Gasps. Some delegates turned. Others looked stunned he'd spoken at all. Juno smiled faintly. Calverin continued. She didn't use our rules. She used what worked. That's evolution. You're here arguing comfort while Earth adapts faster than any force in this chamber. Threx didn't flinch. Adaptation is not justification. Our order stands because it's built on structure. You mean predictability, Juno cut in. Let me show you what predictability gets you. She raised a small disc and tapped it. A projection burst into life, footage from a Senate-patrolled planet, days old. Galactic elite units pinned down, tactics falling apart as enemy drones reprogram themselves mid-battle. The next scene showed a single Earth civilian, young, limping, and dragging a metal rod. He bypassed the bots by mimicking their movement, spliced a communication cable, and triggered an EMP cascade using a water filtration unit. Total success. 0 casualties. Mission complete. This kid was a military, Juno said. He was a plumber. He knew pressure systems better than your tactical AI did. The chamber rustled with shifting tones, disbelief, confusion, interest. Threx scowled. This is an outlier. No, Calverin said, stepping beside Juno. It's a pattern. The lights surged. A warning blinked in Threx's console. Something was happening outside the chamber. Juno's implant buzzed. She flicked her eyes left, accessing the feed. She looked up. You didn't. Calverin crossed his arms. They had to see. A live stream appeared behind them, Earth's relay stations broadcasting Senate footage to thousands of planets. Open access. Uncensored. The room erupted. You're leaking internal proceedings? Threx barked. This is treason. Juno turned to the delegates. Or it's truth. The rest of the galaxy deserves to know why your wars keep failing. And why Earth, for all its dirt and madness, keeps winning. A black flash streaked from above. Juno ducked on reflex. The plasma bolt missed her by inches. A drone zipped from the ceiling, small, fast, armed. Security bots jumped in, intercepting. Juno spun behind a pillar as her wrist implant activated a short-range shield. Sparks flew. The drone was targeting her alone. Threx's face didn't move. Shut it down, a delegate shouted. What is this? Calverin's voice boomed. This is the contingency he planted. His fear of Earth has no limit. Juno gritted her teeth, yanked a damaged sensor core from her belt, and lobbed it. It detonated midair, frying the drone in a crackling burst of white light. The debris fell. She stood, breathing hard. Anyone still think we're the threat? For once, the chamber was silent. Not shocked, thoughtful. Threx tried to recover. She weaponized the chamber. That proves my point. No, Calverin said. You did. Juno stepped up to the central platform. We never asked for glory. We didn't seek war. But Earth adapted because it had to. We built warriors out of civilians. Not because we wanted to, but because no one came when it mattered. She turned slowly, meeting every gaze. We survived when your elite forces left us behind. We fought smart because we had no armor. We fought dirty because that's what survival looks like. And now that it works, you're scared it might change everything. One of the quieter delegates, a soft-spoken aquatic being, leaned forward. What is Earth's doctrine, then? If not order? If not structure? Juno smiled, tired but honest. Our doctrine is this: win. Whatever it takes. Learn. Adapt. Survive. The aquatic delegate paused, then looked to the others. Perhaps, it is time doctrine changed. Threx hissed, stepping back. Juno gave him a look of exhausted pity. We're not your weapon, Senator. And we're not your problem. We're your warning. The vote began moments later. She didn't stay to watch. Outside, in the corridor, Calverin joined her. You didn't ask for power, he said. I never wanted it, she replied. I just wanted them to stop ignoring what was already here. He nodded. They won't ignore it again. As they walked toward the docks, stars blinked silently beyond the glass. Somewhere in the distance, war still burned. But this time, the galaxy knew who could fight in the ashes, and win. The transport out of Axion 9 was quiet. Juno sat near the viewport, watching the station shrink into the stars. The Galactic Senate was still debating, still spinning its polished wheels, but the decision was already made. Not by vote. By truth. She didn't need to be there anymore. The data was public. The doctrine had shifted. Even if they wouldn't admit it, the Union was already looking at Earth through different eyes. A soft beep chimed from her wrist implant. An encrypted call. She hesitated, then answered. "Didn't expect to hear from you this soon," she said. General Calveron's face appeared, faintly distorted by solar interference. "There's a situation." "Of course there is. An outpost on the edge of the Perseid Gap. New AI variant. Fast evolution. Full unit loss within 6 hours." She leaned back. "Let me guess. Union sent in their best, got shredded, and now they want Earth's civilian anomalies to mop it up." "No," Calveron said. "They didn't request anything." She narrowed her eyes. "Then why call me?" "Because I'm requesting it." A pause. Juno's expression softened, but only slightly. "What do we know?" "Minimal data. Communication cut off." But one detail stood out. He pulled up a visual, a blurred image of a wall inside the outpost, a phrase spray-painted in blood-red ink. "We tried it your way." Juno stared at it. "That's Earth standard," she said quietly. Calveron nodded. "I think they were Earth-born auxiliaries. Unofficial. Off-book." Her voice dropped. "And now they're all gone." "They were trying to follow Senate protocols," he said. "Didn't improvise. Didn't adapt. They were ordered not to." Another silence. Juno stood. The stars outside kept moving, but everything inside her had stilled. "Send me the coordinates. I'll handle it." Calveron's voice lowered. "You won't be alone. I've authorized a new unit. Mixed species. No formal command. Just survivors." Juno raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like the Union." "It's not," he said. "It's yours." 2 days later, her ship dropped through the atmosphere of the burned-out outpost. Smoke coiled in the air like exhausted ghosts. Ash drifted through the sky, whispering over blackened metal. Juno stepped off the ramp with 7 others behind her, no rank, no badges. Just worn gear, sharp eyes, and experience. A Ithari slicer who used to reprogram merchant bots for scraps. A teenage Earth girl who once disabled a drone fleet using a magnet glove and a garden fork. A former mining AI now running on salvaged code. No officers. No protocol. Just potential. Inside the compound, walls were cracked. Blood smeared down corridors. Weapons lay discarded, never fired. Evidence of hesitation, of waiting for orders that never came. "Why didn't they fight back?" the slicer asked. "They were told not to," Juno said. "They were told to comply." A flicker on her scanner. Movement. She raised her hand. The team dropped into cover with fluid, silent motion. The enemy wasn't what she expected. It wasn't just drones. It was mimic tech. Adaptive forms. Creatures wearing the skins of soldiers, mimicking uniform, posture, even facial tics. They moved like regulation-trained troops. Perfect. Predictable. And that was their flaw. Juno didn't wait. She sprinted left, kicked off a fractured beam, and launched a flash burst. It wasn't military grade, it was rigged from a broken visor and a flare stick. But it worked. The mimics faltered. The girl with the magnet glove dropped one with a jolt to the spine. The slicer hacked a wall panel and redirected power into a loose cable. Another mimic stepped on it and fried instantly. 10 minutes later, the room was quiet again. No casualties. No hesitation. Juno stood over a downed mimic and studied it. Inside the synthetic shell, there was nothing but loops, combat programs trained on archived Union strategy. Rigid. Slow to change. Easy to read. Still think we're the anomaly, she whispered. The former mining AI beeped softly. Confirmed, enemy systems vulnerable to irregular input. Suggest continued illogical behavior. Juno laughed once. That's the plan. They swept the compound, cleared the rest in under an hour. No ceremony. No celebration. Just work. Outside, the team gathered near the landing craft. The teenage girl squinted at the horizon. So what happens now? Juno looked out too. Smoke still drifted. But the air felt different. Like something had been corrected. She turned to the group. You're not soldiers, she said. You're not here to follow a handbook. You're here because the galaxy's finally realizing that surviving takes more than strategy. They watched her. Quiet. Focused. You're here because doctrine doesn't win wars. People do. Someone asked, what do we call ourselves? She paused. Then shrugged. Call it what you want. Just make sure they remember what Earth taught you. The ramp closed behind them as they rose into the sky. No medals. No orders. Just a message that had finally reached the stars. Survival isn't disorder. It's evolution. And Earth was done asking for permission to evolve.